Hey guys, what's up? What's happening? The King of Games 98 here at your service. How y'all doing? Hope y'all are doing good and staying safe. And the next Christmas related themed movie? Yeah, let's go with that. That I will be reviewing is Elf from 2003. God, that's hard to freaking believe. This movie is now 21 years old. That's crazy. Now, before I start the actual review of this movie, I just want to first say this. Now, when it comes to Will Ferrell, I have encountered people that either like him or dislike him. There's really no in between. I personally am a fan of his. However, I will even be the first to admit that not every Will Ferrell movie I've ever watched I'll be the first to admit that not every Will Ferrell movie I've watched I've liked. Okay? Some of my favorites would be this, Anchorman, Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, just to name a few. But then, there was that weird Blades of Glory, I think it was called, movie, which was just weird. And then there was that movie Night at the Roxbury, which was so bad I couldn't bring myself to finish it. Like, I really didn't like that movie so much that it was to the point where, as I was sitting there watching it, that I was bored. Yeah, pretty bad. So anyway, I just want to let it be known that you either like Will Ferrell or you don't like Will Ferrell. There's really no in between. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Elf. Elf is a great movie about a family coming together, just happens to be in time for Christmas. Now, I'm going to read the back of my DVD copy's case, but long story short, that's basically how I would sum it up. One Christmas Eve long ago, a small orphan baby crawled into Santa's bag of gifts and was carried off to the North Pole. Named Buddy, played by Will Ferrell, and raised by Papa Elf, played by Bob Newhart, it soon became clear that he didn't fit in, as he was much bigger than all the other elves. Determined to find a place where he truly belongs, Buddy sets out to find his real dad in New York City. And that's all I'm going to read. That's all I'm going to read off the back of the DVD case, because that goes along perfectly with what I just said that briefly sums up the whole movie. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I am going to talk about some things I jotted down on my notes here while I watched this. And some good things that I wrote down. Some really good things. And while I was watching this movie, it just brought back so many good memories, so many good scenes. And then a few things that I even wrote down stood out to me as they kind of related to me personally in my life. And I can say these now that I'm an adult. And watching it as an adult, it was funny. So, first and foremost, the first thing I wrote down about Elf is the opening credits are very reminiscent to the opening credits of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And what do I mean by that when I say that? Well, first and foremost, the animations of the snowflakes, definitely from Rudolph. The claymation animals, the walrus, the penguin, I forget what the third one was, but they were all clearly heavily inspired by Rudolph. The snowman, Leon the Snowman, is clearly based off of Burl Ives as the snowman from Rudolph. That I thought was such a fun nod to him as a person and as a singer, because I think he was really well known for both. But after I looked up this movie and looked at the cast, I came to find out that the guy who voiced Leon the Snowman, was actually a famous singer-songwriter in real life. And his actual real name was Leon. I forgot what it said his last name was, but it was actually Leon. So I thought that was pretty funny. And last but certainly not least, the narwhal that shows up in the freezing cold water right as Buddy gets on that block of ice. Clearly, one-for-one recreation from what Rudolph does, sailing across the ocean on the block of ice. It's just so inspired and heavily based off of, I should say, Rudolph, that it was just really funny noticing that. I guess because I've watched and owned this movie for years, and I guess like me as a kid or even teenage me didn't really notice that. So that was kind of funny noticing that as adult me. Yeah, that was cool. Okay, next thing I have written down here. The scene where Buddy is a full-grown adult sitting in a classroom with little kids reminds me of when I was in high school. Now, let me elaborate on that a little bit. So, when I was in high school, I was in a couple of remedial classes. I will call them that because I think that's the proper word to call them anyway. And, I don't want to use any other type of word that might be offensive, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So what do I mean by that? Well, I was in a couple of remedial classes, actually, throughout high school I was. And when I got to my senior year of high school, I was in a Spanish class. Now, I know what you're probably thinking of this. Why were you in a Spanish class your senior year of high school? Okay, let me elaborate a little bit on that. So, my freshman, sophomore, and junior years in high school, I never took a language. So when I got to high school, they were like, when I got to my senior year of high school, they said, you have to take a language. Now, why did I choose Spanish? Because I had a couple different choices, but I specifically chose Spanish. And that was because in 5th grade, yes, 5th grade, I had a Spanish class, and I was taught Spanish, how to speak Spanish, and learn and understand Spanish in 5th grade. So when they were like, fast forward to my senior year of high school to 2016, and they were like, you got to take a language class. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to go with Spanish. So I'm sitting in that Spanish class, and I can't even begin to tell you how awkward I felt being a senior in a Spanish language class where the majority of the other students were either freshmen or sophomore. I felt so freaking out of place and just awkward that when I saw that scene, it just really made me think of that. So I had to write it down because I wanted to mention it in this review video. Okay, the next thing I have written down is the toy testing scene where Buddy is sent because he fails at the Etch-a-Sketches and is sent to the toy testing area to test the Jack-in-the-Boxes. So the toy testing scene reminds me of playing Perfection as a kid and having the absolute crap scared out of me. Now, how do I associate this scene with me as a kid playing perfection? Well, Buddy in that scene is, testing out, quality testing, I guess you could call it, the Jack-in-the-Boxes and gets the absolute crap scared out of him. Well, me as a kid, I would play the classic board game. Well, is it a board game? I guess it's a board game. I don't know. But anyway, me as a kid, I would play the classic board game Perfection. And I wasn't very good at it. And when for those of you who have ever played the game, when the time runs out, all the pieces pop up basically at you. And that scared the crap out of me. That really did as a kid. And I guess kid me just kind of resonated with Buddy in that scene. So I wrote it down and wanted to mention that. Last, well, okay, I mean, not really last, but this movie has an all-star cast in it. Not just because it mainly stars Will Ferrell, but the rest of the cast in it makes this movie. Just absolutely makes it. So alongside Will Ferrell, of course, is James Caan. Great actor. Next up is Zooey Deschanel. Hopefully I said that right. And, she's been in so many things over the years. I know, back in the 2010s, she was starring in that Fox show New Girl. And that was really good for her and apparently was very popular. Jon Favreau, which, apologize if I butcher his name, but I just have a hard time saying his name. Jon Favreau is an actor and a screenwriter and director. It was so funny to see him actually play a part in this movie and to see how he looked back in 2003 as to how he looks now with the same black curly hair, except nowadays he sports a goatee, and back then he didn't. But it was still really funny to see him. Peter Dinklage. Freaking Peter Dinklage is so good in this. And, nowadays, I guess he's really known for Game of Thrones. I know he's been in so many other movies and TV shows, but that's really the only thing that's coming to my mind right now. Bob Newhart. Okay. Bob Newhart. Okay, so like I said, I've owned and watched this movie for years. I did not know that name, and I didn't really know him as an actor until I saw the episodes where he guest starred in Big Bang Theory, and then my dad told me all about him. And so I've been a fan of him ever since I saw him first in Big Bang Theory. He is an absolute legend, and it is a shame that we lost him back in the summer of 2024. May he rest in peace. It was so hysterical. If you've never seen the episodes where he's guest stars in Big Bang Theory, do yourself a favor and go and watch them. They're so freaking funny. Ed Asner. That is another actor whose name did not ring a bell to me, but my dad told me about him and just said wonderful things about him. Okay. Faizon Love. Hopefully I said his name right. Now, when I looked Elf up on Google and looked at the cast, his name came up, and I took one look at his picture and I said, wait a minute. Why does he look familiar? I recognize him. So then I clicked on him. And lo and behold, after looking at the movies and TV shows he was in, I saw the movie that I recognized him in. Faizon Love was in the 1995 classic movie Friday alongside Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. Now, if you're not familiar with the name and are familiar with Friday and are curious what's the correlation, he played Big Worm in Friday. That is where I recognized him from. Absolutely hysterical. Peter Billingsley. Peter freaking Billingsley, Ralphie, You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, was in this. I never knew that. All these years watching this and A Christmas Story, I never knew that. He plays the elf Ming Ming in this. That's so freaking funny. And the last person that I have to talk about is Patrick Farrell. Will Ferrell's brother was actually in this. Now, he was not a major character or wasn't a big role, but he was still in this, so I thought that was cool and worth mentioning. He plays one of the security guards that throws Buddy out of the hotel when he first tries to see his dad, Walter Hobbs. I thought that was pretty funny. Now, there are so many classic, iconic, whatever you want to describe them as, scenes from this movie, from Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color, to, oh, he's an angry elf, must be a South Pole elf, to, him walking in on Jovi, aka Zooey Deschanel's character, while she's in the shower singing, to the scene with Jon Favreau in the doctor's office, and, him coming back out and saying he's biologically your son, There are so many good scenes in this movie that there's just no way I could pick one to be my favorite because there's just so many, When he gets to New York and encounters the raccoon and tries to give him a hug, when clearly the raccoon shouldn't have been out in broad daylight. There's just so many good scenes throughout this movie that it just makes it a classic. This movie with its cast is an absolute classic. I cannot say a single bad thing about Elf from 2003. Have you watched Elf before? If so, what do you think of the movie? And is it one of your favorites? Let me know down below in the comment section. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.